Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May all the peace and blessings of the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on all of us. Now today, as you can see, I want us to dive and navigate through reception, response and coordination in plants. As we know that plants do not locomote, but rather they show movement at some organ level, and therefore we want to discuss how are the plants able to move and what is the name of the movement in plants. We all know that plants are just fixated on a particular point and they can never move entirely from one place to another. But therefore, they show some responses in form of growth known as tropisms. So I want us to look at the tropisms. Number one, we have definition of the term tropism. What is a tropism? Tropism is a growth movement in response to a unidirectional external stimulus. And we are going to look what are some of the types of tropisms and what are their specific stimulus which are causing such response. Now, we have ways in which these tropisms occur. It can be positive response or it can be a negative response. We say that the tropism is positive if the growth curvature is towards the stimulus, and we say that the response is negative if the growth curvature is away from the stimulus. Now, let's look at the types of responses without wasting time. We have number one, phototropism. When defining phototropism, just start with this. You say it is a growth movement or it is a growth curvature in response to the direction and intensity of light. Very simple. You say it is a growth movement or a growth curvature in response to the direction and intensity of light. We have also chemotropism. What is chemotropism? It is a growth movement or curvature in response to a gradient of chemical reaction. And we are going to see that this one is basically shown by the growth of the pollen tube towards the embryo sac. The pollen tube germinates downwards towards the embryo sac as a result of the attraction by the chemical secreted at the embryo sac. We also have the geotropism. You say it is a growth movement or growth curvature in response to gravity. Very simple. Let's come to hydrotropism. It's also a growth movement or rather a growth curvature in response to water or moisture. It is being shown by the roots growing downwards seeking water, and therefore we say that roots are positively hydrotropic. Zygmotropism. It is also another tropism which is a growth movement or rather a growth curvature in response to contact with solid objects. It is being shown by the weak stems, e.g. the tendrils, that twine around branches of strong stems to attain support. Very simple. In all of them, at the first part you have to write, it is a growth movement or growth curvature in response to, number one, direction and intensity of light. Number two, chemical gradient of chemical reactions. Number three, reaction in response to gravity. Number four, in response to water. Number five, in response to touch or contact with solid object. It's also known as the haptotropism. Now we have the survival tactics of tropisms. Number one, phototropisms exposes the leaves to maximize light absorption. And what follows next is the process of photosynthesis. Chemotropism. When the pollen tube germinates downwards towards the embryo sac. Finally, the fertilization occurs. Number 3, geotropism is the response towards gravity. And we know that gravity acts downwards. And at this point, we are going to speak about the shoots and the roots. Which one is positively geotropic and which one is negatively geotropic. Having known that gravity acts downwards, we can see that the shoot is growing upwards, and that is, we say that the shoots is negatively geotropic because it's against the gravity. What about the roots? The roots grow downwards. As well, gravity acts downwards. Therefore, that means the roots are positively geotropic. Let's go to hydrotropism. Hydrotropism, we said, it is the growth curvature, or rather the growth movement in response to water or moisture. What is the survival tactics of it? It enables the plant to seek water underground. Zygmotropism is also a growth response, which we say growth movement or curvature in response to contact with a solid object or other type, sometimes being referred to as the haptotropism. What is the survival tactic of this? It enables the plant weak stems to obtain mechanical support. Done. And that is briefly about definition of tropism, positive and negative tropisms, types of tropism, and the survival tactic of each and every tropism. Now let's go to the next thing. Let's look at the Auxin and geotropism. Auxin and phototropism, as well Auxin and zygmo, or rather haptotropism. Look, number 1, we have Auxin and phototropism. This is the stem. And we can see this is the distribution of Auxin. But you also need to pay attention to the distribution of Auxin and the direction of light. As you can see that this light is very uniform. It's not unidirectional. And as such, therefore, this is the first experiment where auxins were equally distributed at the apex of the shoot. Now, after the experiment, the growth was normal. There was normal elongation at the zone of cell elongation, whereby the shoot just developed normally. What has happened? Because the direction of light is uniform, therefore there is uniform distribution of the growth hormones, that is the auxin, and therefore we can see that the zone of cell elongation at the apex of the shoot has uniformly increased in height. Let's look at another view where we subject the light unidirectionally. Look at this. This is our shoot apex, and this is the distribution of auxin. And at the start of the experiment or before, we can see that the auxin distribution is equally at the apex of the shoot. Very clear. But what happens after the experiment? We can see after the experiment that the auxins migrated from the lit side, from the side where the light was direct, to the darker side, and we can see that the auxins are highly concentrated on the darker side of the shoot. And what happens? Auxin concentration on the darker side of the shoot promotes faster growth, and once it promotes faster growth, the shoot curves towards the source of light, because higher oxygen concentration on the darker side promotes faster growth at this particular point. Done. Let's look at Auxin and geotropism. And we said geotropism, it is a growth curvature or a growth movement in response to gravity. Now, this is horizontal placed roots and the leaves, the stem, and everything. Now, Auxin accumulates when on the lower side of the shoot and roots. Reason being, gravity causes Auxin to migrate on to the lower side of the shoot and roots. And what happens? We are going to see that Auxin promotes growth at the root when it is low in concentration. Oppositely, high oxygen concentration at the shoot promotes faster growth, while lower concentration of oxygen at the root promotes faster growth. And this is before the experiment. This is before, or at the start of the experiment. This is how it looks after the experiment. We can see that this one has curved downwards, while the other one curved upwards. What has happened? We are going to see that the oxygen were highly concentrated on the lower side of the root as well the shoot. But we know that at the root level, low oxygen concentration promotes faster growth as compared to when it is highly concentrated. Therefore, low oxygen concentration on the upper side of the root promotes faster growth. Therefore, meaning it will elongate, hence curving downwards. On the other side, we can see that higher oxygen concentration on the lower side of the shoot promotes faster growth at the low side of it, hence enabling it to curve upwards. And that is it. But how can we say about this that the shoot is negatively geotropic? How? Because gravity is acting downwards and the shoot is growing upward, that is negative. While gravity acts downwards and the roots growing downwards, that is positively geotropic. And that is briefly about the reception, response, and coordination. In our next class, we will be looking at Auxin and the digmotropism, the NACTI responses, and more will be following. Thank you very much and stay blessed throughout your life. Thank you.